when it comes to being able to connect to spirit or anything that you want to channel, whether that's an artistic talent or whether that's an idea or anything that you want to channel, it's really a matter of putting yourself in the mindset of the person who will experience that, right? So if I want to get messages, then it's a matter of me giving myself permission to let that part of me open up, to settle down, stop all the other parts of who Charlie is from stepping on my toes, and just let me be the I'm connecting Charlie right now.
Welcome to another episode from Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. Today's guest is a person who I got to meet under his hidden name. And I didn't even realize I had saved his name as what he referred as to that was my mask. And when we understood how the guides had put instead of Charlie, Andrew, I was like, oh, hold on. There is a story here. And I'm curious to see how this will interact or involve in the conversation today. But it's important to mention this because when we are guided, so often we don't know why we say certain things, why something is coming up in a certain way. Yet, when we choose to trust, we also choose to move through a way that allows you to be like, oh, that's why I said what I said. So without further delay, welcome, Andrew. Welcome to this podcast and sharing your story.
Well, hello, Matina. Thank you very much for having me. We'll start with Andrew, sure. So obviously my name isn't actually Andrew. I go by Charlie. It's legal now and everything along those lines. 20 some odd years ago or so, I had a love interest. And I am not typically one to dip into the dishonest side of life by any means. I've always held honesty with the highest standard. But for that period of my life, I decided to go by the name Andrew. That way I could remain hidden from the parents of this particular love interest, and needless to say, the expectation of dishonesty reflected relatively well with that relationship, and it's definitely not where I ended up. So today I am Charlie. I'm the ordinary guy. I live in Nova Scotia. I have transitioned from a urban setting where I just stuck it to the 9 to 5, and that was everything. Now I am out here enjoying the beautiful ocean, the beautiful rolling hills. I'm finding a way to give back to the community, both through my work in the counseling clinic. I'm an intake worker there, and as a volunteer firefighter here. So actually I'm wearing their shirt today, but
Beautiful. There's so many hats, and I love that the angels once again made me say Andrew instead of Charlie, because the point that they're trying to really truthfully make is in life, we have so many different roles. We have so many different masks, depending on the person we're talking to, depending on the role that we're fulfilling, and how we are expected to behave a certain way in a certain environment. And for the guides to continue to highlight this is really about us understanding how many layers to us there truthfully are. And the fact that you are in helping with the intake for counseling, you are very community oriented with helping with the firefighters. It brings a very important element of community. Before I even talk about community, I'm going to dial it back a bit and really start with the question, what was your disconnection or loneliness moment that has actually led you into Overflow, Charlie, today?
Well, so disconnection for me happened at an early age. My mom would be happy to tell you that, up until the age 3 or whatever like that, I was amazing and I was capable of doing 1,000,001 things that no 3-year-old should be able to do. But obviously, I don't remember that period of my life. I remember growing up with my father after he had left my mom at that point in time. And honestly, I didn't even know my mom was my mom at that point. For me, my stepmom was my mom. I don't remember ever visiting with my biological mom, although she tells me, I did on numerous occasions. But Absolutely. I was so disconnected from who I was that I didn't even know who my own family was when they came to visit. So it was kind of crazy. And then I truly got to understand what that disconnect was when my dad's marriage fell apart and I wound up moving back in with my mom, and that's when I discovered who she is, what her role was in my life, and how she was actually important to me. And she helped me realize the amount of resentment that I had built up. Obviously, there was some less pleasant reasons for that resentment in regards to the way I was treated as a child, but all in all, I had, a normal childhood. Ran and played and had fun in the neighborhood, and then came home to the home which was a little less pleasant. And so ultimately, that's what fostered my disconnection. My mom guided me through that, worked through resentment and such like. And by the time I turned 13, she had recognized in me a calling for something beyond just the mundane physical world that we live in. So we started looking into things like spirituality and religion and stuff. And she turned me on to Wicca, which was an absolutely fantastically mind-opening, eye-opening experience. And honestly, that would probably be my first true experience with Overflow, in my opinion. It is, however, what defined Overflow to me. I know that Overflow really comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but in so many ways for me, Overflow is about feeling the web of reality and really being able to work within it because you are part of it. And that can seem incredibly large, incredibly daunting, and incredibly impossible to a lot of people. But me, as I was a teenager and I was finding myself being able to do crazy things like invoke thunderstorms and stop cars because time had stopped, and flying and levitating and crazy things. People can tell me now I was imagining it, sure, whatever. It doesn't matter whether I was or whether I wasn't. It became my definition for what being connected to spirituality, to reality, truly was, and defined for me what magic ultimately is in life and in reality. And so that would be my first experience with Overflow. And I have since bounced up and down. I have found myself incredibly connected at points, and I have found myself incredibly distant at other points. And the distant points often feel like depression. They're surrounded by a variety of self-talk that is not positive. And then those times when I'm feeling more connected are those times when I am feeling invigorated, I'm inspired, I'm energized, and I could walk on the clouds. Not literally, but that's the feeling. And there's a lightness to me, right? And so that's where I've oscillated back and forth throughout life, and that brings me to where I am today.
I feel so grateful that you mentioned negative self talk.
Hmm.
We all do it.
Hmm.
No one is excluded from this. We all have those little voices in our heads where the doubt lives and where the fear is and where all of these heavinesses are, which we call the shadow. But where there is shadow, there's also light. And we tend to forget that. We tend to forget that when we are in a darker period of life, be that depression, be that anxiousness, be that like fearfulness, whatever it might be, there's always a light that is waiting for you to recognize that there's a way out, a new perspective, perhaps, a new way of being and living, perhaps. So, what I'm curious to ask is, how did you help yourself with maybe a new perspective and maybe a different way of looking at things, or something surprising that happened in the past where you were like, I was in this dark phase of my life with all of these negative self-talk, but by recognizing this, I shifted?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. One, and the most obvious and easy way, which is maybe not the best way, but it's, the higher power, the Holy Spirit, will put things in your path. He'll speak to you through people around you. He'll speak to you through books or even commercials or random pop-ups that come up on the computer, and that'll send you down a rabbit hole, and then you come out the other end of that rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you're a different person. And it's kind of crazy how that happens. And then there's other times when it's been a little bit more self-directed, self-guided. I mentioned that I came to understand how magic is a thing in my life and such. But then I've been a little disconnected from that. But every now and then, when life is pressing on me, Say, for instance, at one point in time, I relocated. And when I relocated, I was comfortable. I had money. It wasn't a big deal, but I didn't have a job. And everything was fine. I was happy. Everything was great. And I was not at all worried about finding a job. But that money started to disappear. And then there started to be a bit of a panic. And I knew that I needed a job. And for some reason, I just knew that I was going to have a job. And I didn't need to worry about it. And somebody told me, hey, contact this staffing agency. So I contacted the staffing agency, and the next day I found myself at I guess it was an open house, is what it was pitched at, but it was really a welcome to your employment here at this new place. And so just like that, within 48 hours, I suddenly found that I had a job. And that was just simply because I stopped trying. I got out of my own way and I let the Holy Spirit do his thing. And it worked fantastically. And that has always been a fantastic example for me. So when I am feeling down, when I'm feeling disconnected, when I feel like it doesn't matter and I might as well just go jump off that bridge because nothing matters anymore, I am reminded that whether I give up on myself or not, as soon as I step out of my own way, there's something there that is always working to make sure that what I need is being taken care of. It's not necessarily what I want, but what I need is being taken care of. It's a fantastic example. And specifically when it comes to jobs, I've actually used that trick a few times in my life, and it's worked every time.
What you need versus what you want. It's very important to highlight this, what you just said, because so often do we get stuck in what we want versus what we need. And in that regard, it is about surrender. It is about trusting. It is about believing that something bigger, better could come from this. One thing that you also said, Charlie, is when you started hearing spirit, or when you started listening and tuning into that radio station, if you will, of, okay, what is the guidance here? Tell us more about your journey when it comes to receiving guidance, how you perceive it, because everyone is different. Everyone receives it differently. So how do you receive it, and how are you maybe utilizing or maybe even helping yourself and others around you in that regard?
Well, I guess the receiving part is real easy. It's just always there. I ignore it most of the time. Honestly, I'll actively say, shut up, stop bugging me. It's just, I don't need to worry about this. I don't need that talk, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Strangely, that connection is, like I said, it's always there, and it always feels like the positive self-talk, which is trying to outdo my negative self-talk. And obviously it's when I've got that negative self-talk engine really running, that's when I'm like, I don't want to listen to that positivity. Nuh-uh, no. But when I do actively want to connect, I can just sit down and quiet myself and listen, and the voice is there. I have some distinction issues when it comes to the voice in my own head, however. So if I'm just sitting there and I'm just listening, who am I to say this is my voice, this is not my voice, where is this coming from? It sounds like something I would tell myself anyway, so why should I listen to it? It speaks in my language. Doesn't matter, right? So it's easy to dismiss because it sounds like me talking to me. Now, when I really want to connect, though, I'll sit down with a pen and paper and I will probably start with a question, and somehow I magically have the answer to that question, and it just writes right out on the paper in front of me. It's not automatic writing. It's still writing that I'm actively engaged in, and I can stop at any point in time and ask, hey, wait, what does this mean? Or are you sure that's the way this is supposed to be? Or anything along those lines. It's not automatic, but it's fluid. It's fast. I so many times find that even before I have written my question, the answer is already there. And that is maybe the biggest reason for me to write it down, is because of the fact that it slows my brain. One of the issues I've got is, I'll ask a question, and before I finished asking the question, whether it's on paper or not, the full-fledged answer is already there. And it just gets jumbled and lost in the craziness of my own thoughts. And so when I do write it down, it winds up being something that I can actually see and I can actually process and I can actually integrate it and make sense of it.
Isn't it fascinating that when things come easy to us, we dismiss it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If it's easy everybody would do it. If it's easy, there's no sense in charging for it because everybody can do it. And that was something that I learned when I went to I went to school to be a holistic nutritionist. And one of the things that was drilled into us there was you need to make sure you're paying or not paying, you're charging for your services, because as somebody who wants to help people, you don't necessarily want to charge for your services because you want to make it freely available for everybody. But it's something that you spent time doing. It's something that you spent time learning, whatever that looks like. Whether in my case with schooling, it was me going to school, or whether it's me sitting down and having a talk with spirit. The fact of the matter is, it's not something that everybody can or will do. And dismissing that because of the fact that it's just second nature to me is like saying, I can go climb a mountain because it's super easy for me and everybody can do it, but I'm going to just ignore it. I mean, if you've got that connection to climbing the mountain, it's because you love it. It's because you're passionate about it. It's because it's a part of who you are. Therefore, realistically, if you've got that connection to being able to talk to spirit, it's because you love it. It's because it's part of who you are. It's not something to ignore and dismiss.
I am loving this answer because not only are we compelled to charge for the services that we naturally provide, but the other part of that coin is the other person actually takes it seriously because they have invested their time, their money into something.
Absolutely.
And that is key, because if someone else is like, okay, I'm grateful that you're offering for free. I love it. Thank you. But you know what? My agenda is full. I'll figure it out. I'll come to you one day. That will never happen because there is no commitment to it. So commitment comes from putting money down. Commitment comes from making an agreement. Commitment comes from saying yes. And by going a little bit back again, the other part is what comes easy to you because it's so connected to your soul doesn't mean it comes easy to someone else. And I am spiritual, but I'm spiritual in a different way. So the way that you're like, okay, I can just tune in, I can just ask a question, I'll get the answer right away. I'm like, oh, I want that. But instead of saying, I want that, it's like, okay, what is it that you are embodying that it comes easily to you? Because that is truly the trick. When you embody something, that is when we receive something. So there is, even in the moments that you don't want it, especially in the moments that you don't want it, it can be louder and louder for you because it's like, I can help you. Why are you not listening? Come to me, right?
Oh, I get that a lot.
So for the listeners who don't have the capacity right now to understand what it means to tune in to their spirit, tune in into their own guidance, into their own beautiful guides that are ready to help them and serve them, how have you found, can you explain to others what you do?
Well, I think it's really about mindset. You mentioned something earlier about the roles that we play in life. And I know that we can all watch an actor on screen and say, wow, they're great, they're awesome, and they're so completely believable in the role that they're in. But then we find ourselves disheartened by who they are when we start looking into them as a person and not as the character that they're playing on TV. And all of a sudden we see that there's a distinction there, and it really comes down to the role that they're playing. When somebody gets on the TV and they're playing the role of a medical doctor, they are the doctor for that period of their life. They've tuned in to that moment. When they turn that off, they let themselves walk away from stage and the camera, and then now they're back into, okay, I'm normal me, and we're good to go, and I can stop thinking about all those doctor things. It's a different part of me that's just locked up. So when it comes to being able to connect to spirit or anything that you want to channel, whether that's an artistic talent or whether that's an idea or anything that you want to channel, it's really a matter of putting yourself in the mindset of the person who will experience that, right? So if I want to get messages, then it's a matter of me giving myself permission to let that part of me open up, to settle down, stop all the other parts of who Charlie is from stepping on my toes, and just let me be the I'm connecting Charlie right now. If I want to go out and be a firefighter, sitting here in this chair right now, I often feel like I don't know anything about firefighting. But, when you're out there and you're in the moment and you're doing it, there's no longer a question about which Charlie is there. And you just automatically, you do it. And that's the role that you're playing. Right then, at that moment, I'm the firefighter. When I am dealing with my kids, I'm no longer the just general Charlie. I'm the Charlie who is the dad. And, when a question comes up that dads need to answer, Dad has an answer. Whether Charlie did or not, Dad has an answer. So it's really about the mindset that you allow yourself to be in at a particular moment. So yeah, if it's a matter of connecting with spirit and getting answers, then just have to put yourself in the role of being the guy who's going to receive those answers. Whether you want to label that so that it makes it easier, call yourself a medium or a channel, then that can certainly help. If you want to put yourself in the label of I'm the one who's praying right now, then that works too. Because ultimately, if it's a matter of receiving messages, prayer is just a conversation with God. So by all means, if that's the mindset that you need to have in order to get those answers, then go ahead and do that. But obviously, if you're looking for answers, remember that part of that role is to listen also.
One thing you said about we can look at a screen, we can enjoy an actor in their role and how they are projecting themselves. The thought that came through in that regard was Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
His whole story of life that was portrayed in a certain ways in the 90s, how he was being made to believe that he's doing something wrong and was shut down and shut down and shut down. And now, 20 years later, 2 decades later, the reality of his life is coming to light. And it becomes a very interesting discussion point because it goes back to what you said earlier. We can look at and choose to look at someone from a specific lens, but we never know truthfully how they are and who they are in their heart and soul unless and until you actually know them.
Yeah. And even then, there's the other side of the coin too. It's not about how you perceive them. It's about how you think they perceive you. Like, we often put ourselves in the role of, well, this person expects me to be the spiritual advisor, so I'm going to be the spiritual advisor now. This person expects me to be the husband, so I'm going to be the husband right now. And a lot of times we are wrong about what they are expecting of us, and it's ultimately still just our perception. But absolutely, whether we're looking at them expecting them to fit a particular mold, we also look at them and think that they expect us to fit that particular mold as well.
Exactly. Absolutely. 1,000% yes. When you said that it is about us tuning into what we actually want, and it can be done through many different layers with prayer, with sitting and automatic writing, with a lot of training as mediumship or whatever else have you. For some people, some things are going to come very natural. For other people, they need training in something that they are looking to build their skill in. With you, because the guidance was always there so naturally, what have you stepped into learning or building your skill in to truthfully land in your own groundedness of, oh, wow, I can do this?
Well, I think training is important. I mentioned that I had gotten involved with Wicca when I was a kid. That was an eye-opening experience because up until that point in time, I didn't realize that there was a whole aspect of the world that I was ignorant of. I think ultimately the training that we get in life is us truly working through whatever it is that we need to work through so that we can give ourselves the permission to be that person we're trying to be because of that training. When it comes to if you want to get your Reiki certification, for instance, I've got that myself, and it was a fantastic experience to get the Reiki certification. I learned a lot about connecting with spirit. I learned a lot about connecting with myself. I learned a lot about channeling. But at the end of the day, I don't use that. I don't. It's a certificate. It's a piece of paper that says you've done this. Good job. And so it's not about the training in the end. It's about the giving yourself permission to be that person.
And I'm going to add to this, it is also about recognizing what comes easy to you. Because I've done certifications too, and some of them it's like, okay, that was nice, and other ones stick with you, and they become that staircase where it's like, oh, I actually went a step further with than this. Wow, I can actually do this. Oh, wow. And you just surprise and continue to surprise yourself from a spiritual lens that allows you then to move ahead with the gifts that you've been given. Now, clearly, you have been given this beautiful gift of hearing the guidance. Have you felt the need to help others with guidance that's coming through, or were you pinned with like, tell this person this?
So yes and no. When I am engaged in conversation with somebody who is open to the idea, I often get the ideas that I should share this message. I've got a friend who regularly communicates with Spirit herself, and we can have some rip-roaring conversations, which are a lot of fun because it's a matter of Spirit told me this, and then I'm saying, well, Spirit told me this, and we're just going back and forth off of that, and we're each helping each other understand different facets of reality through our conversation there, and it's fantastic in so many ways. I think that is a lot like the back and forth that somebody might have in a brainstorming session where you're just feeding ideas off of each other, and it's growing and it's growing and it's ramping up. But as far as actually like helping people, I have been guided to help people my entire life. I mentioned my mom earlier. She used to have friends who would call her up because she was the phone number that they had in order to reach me. But they just wanted to talk to me for guidance. These guys are like 30, 40, 50 something. They're dealing with life issues. And I'm like maybe 10, maybe 12, and I'm giving them advice because of the fact that they're asking for it and I'm giving it. So yes, absolutely, I have been called to provide guidance to people in numerous facets of life, and I've provided it. Also had issues where the ego, if you will, has stepped in and said, you are meant for more. I've had people tell me my entire life, dude, you're super powerful. It's like, I don't care that I'm super powerful. I don't want to care that I'm super powerful. If it's a thing, it's a thing. If it's not, it's not. Whatever. Let guides guide me the way, and I'll get there when I get there. But otherwise, the idea is terrifying and intimidating, and if I am meant for something bigger and more fantastic when it comes to guiding the world, then I'll get there. But until then, the idea is terrifying, and it's kind of like a magnification of the same terror that you get when you start talking to people individually. You know, if you're talking to somebody and Spirit says, hey, you know what, tell them this, and you're like, no. And that terror is enough to stop you in that moment. And that moment where you had the impulse to share that information, that was overflow. But then the moment that you turn around and said, no, that was you choosing loneliness. So to take your loneliness and overflow motif there, that's a very clear, cut and dry. And like I said, I bounce back and forth in that all the time.
My guides are literally laughing. They're like, okay, that's what you think. We know what you think. The thing that is really clearly coming through, if you are ready to embrace it, or not yet, or not fully, we also have these little steps that we can take to get ready. I know in my journey, if someone had told me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, this is what you're going to be doing, I would have laughed in their face. Like, that is no way in hell I will be ever doing that. At the same time, I recognize that my journey has come in very increment steps. And very slowly have I gradually allowed myself to serve and to show up for others. Now, in that though, when you talk about the ego, it is very important to mention what is the intention, right? This is at least what I've learned. If my intention is to serve from my heart, to provide the other person with love, light, and healing, and knowing that I am the vessel. I'm not the one doing it. I'm the vessel through which it is being done. So with that intention, I'm allowed, and I can, without my ego stepping in and thinking so much of myself, to serve. And I think it's same for you, where when you allow to serve and that service to be exactly what it needs to be without a measuring stick of how much do we do and how far do we get, anything like that. And just to trust that this is the step that they need right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say every journey starts with the first step, and absolutely that's true. What they don't tell you is what the first step is. And the first step is willingness, right? Like if you're not willing, if you're not allowing, if you're not giving yourself permission, then you're just simply never going to get there. So you have to have that willingness to get there. And it sounds like you've got the willingness, and that's amazing. And I totally kudos to you for being able to open up and allow yourself to be a vessel in that way.
You have the willingness too. That's why we're having this conversation today. You're just kind of getting there, but you have the willingness too.
We'll see. We'll see.
Honestly, thank you. Thank you for saying we'll see, because that means you're authentic to yourself. And that authentic behavior, that truthfully recognizing that I am still dealing with both facets. I can still step into the fear and I can still step into the willingness based on where I am in my journey, in my day, with the people that I am. Right? At the same time, there is always this divine connection ready and available to serve you. So I'm going to ask you something which I've never asked any of my guests, but this is something that from the beginning kind of been alluded to, like, see how it goes. So I'm going to ask, would you be willing to tune into spirit and share what would the message be of spirit right now with all the chaos of the world and all the different things that's happening, for the listener to hear what actually they can ground themselves in?
We are being presented a lot of fear in life right now, but that's not new. It's something that we've experienced our entire history from the moment we became self-aware to now, and we'll never stop being faced with that fear. If we choose to let that fear guide our actions, whether that's to support a particular politician or not, whether that's to engage in combat or not, or whether that's to go to the gas station or not, that doesn't change the fact that a fear-guided response is not growth. And at the end of the day, everybody wants growth. So check in with yourself. Are you making decisions for growth, or are you making decisions for fear?
Beautiful.
Always answers that I need to hear too.
Of course. My follow-up question to that is, what's your growth? And you can ask it through spirit. That's okay by me.
No, so my growth at the moment, actually, at the risk of breaking the fourth wall here, Matina, you guided me to a book recently, and shout out for it, Disappearance of the Universe, fantastically mind-blowing book. One of the biggest principles that they talk about in that book is forgiveness. And it's not forgiveness of others while looking like forgiveness for others. It's ultimately forgiveness of yourself. And it's so much deeper than that, but I tend to look at things from the perspective of permission. And so for me, that forgiveness is the same as saying giving myself permission to do something. And most recently, that has been a matter of giving myself permission to actually open up and communicate with the Holy Spirit, giving myself permission to, sit still and just be. I've wrestled with what meditation means my entire life, and there are so many different definitions of it out there. But one of the things that this particular book happened to mention was, just open yourself to the love of spirit, however that feels for you. Whether you're calling spirit God or Jesus or Allah or whatever label you want to give it, let yourself feel connected. Let yourself be a conduit of love. In Reiki terms, that's literally opening yourself up and letting the universal energy flow through you. Now, from that state, just sit. Be quiet. You can observe the thoughts going through, but don't actively think things. Don't sit there saying, okay, well, I need to make sure to get this done or get this done or get this done. Legitimately, this morning, I was sitting here and my thoughts immediately went to, I need to go get something from the top shelf over there and put it underneath my computer. I did ultimately do that. That's how come I'm framed as nicely as I am now. But that was where my thoughts went. And I had to say, you know what? That's great. chalk that up, remember it for later, but aim for quiet. And I think, honestly, that's probably where my growth is at the moment, is being willing, as you stated, to actually let myself walk this path. Stop trying to convince myself that I'm a failure, or that the world around me hates me, or that I'm going to be in trouble, or whatever. Stop with the negative self-talk and recognize that it is in fact just that. It's not real. It's negative self-talk. But that being said, while I was preparing for this podcast, actually, I had a realization about self-talk. And that's this. It doesn't matter what self-talk you use, it's real. If you use negative self-talk, it's real. If you use positive self-talk, it's real. And it's not real because it already existed. It's real because you've now decided that's what it is. And so you're going to make it real, and you're going to validate it, and you're going to look for those examples in your life to tell you this is absolutely truth. Whatever your negative self-talk is, or whether your positive self-talk is, that's going to become your reality. So choose what you talk to yourself about, honestly.
I feel so grateful for the fact that you said yes to recording this podcast, and for our listeners to actually be faced and with someone who is so raw in acknowledging where you are in your journey right now. And I said it to you before, I'm going to say it on screen as well, is when we go from loneliness to overflow, it's not one moment. It's not like, ta-da, we made it. It really is about taking steps. It really is about continuing to evolve ourselves in the journey that we're on. And for us to have this conversation today feels so pivotal, not only because you are so open and willing to share it, but also because there are so many people who are being awakened to their gifts and simply don't know where to go and what to do with it. You had a guiding force, which was your mother, who allowed you to recognize that this is something bigger than what we see with our eyes. And then from there, you have always been able to tap in and tune that radio station on and off based on where you were at in your own life. And from going from hiding to being front-facing and being seen for the human that you are, for the gifts that you bring to this world, it is important for every single listener to understand that everyone has these gifts. You and I are not different. We all have these gifts. It's more about us choosing to tune into that radio station, to truly allow and be willing to hear that message, to hear what feels and rings true in our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've had conversations with my grandfather, who's very Christian, and we've talked about spiritual gifts. And he's pointed out that, in the Bible, I believe it's the book of Acts, where they talk about the different disciples and a meeting that they were having. And in that meeting, there was, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people who expressed their gifts, and some of them were speaking in tongues, and some of them were prophetizing, and everybody had different gifts. And just because of the fact that we have an idea of what our gift should be, maybe that is what our gift will be, because that's where the idea came from. But we don't want to hold ourselves to that mold. We live in a world where we talk about things like clairvoyance, clairsentience, telekinesis. And these are all different kinds of gifts. We wouldn't have a whole lot of different names for them if they weren't different for every person. Otherwise, it would just be you're psychic, and that'd be the end of it. But everybody's got a different manifestation and a different way of being able to connect with spirit. We're not doing ourselves any favors by comparing ourselves to somebody else and trying to emulate what they're doing, unless it happens to harmonize with who we are.
I absolutely agree. There's no one size fits all for anyone. And even when you're like, a Reiki master, that's not the only thing you are. There's so much more facets to you than that you recognize in that moment. I'm loving this conversation. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being so raw and authentic. Now, we have a little ritual on this podcast, whereas I'm going to ask you a question that the previous guest has left. And when we're done recording, I'm going to ask you to leave a question for the next one. So the question I have for you today is, what do you wish your younger self had known?
I wish that my younger self had never forgotten its connection to divinity, ultimately. I think is really where I go with that. That sounds like a cop out in so many ways, but I truly believe that as an infant, we come in, we're still connected to divinity. And as we grow, we gradually overwrite that divinity with what culture tells us is the right thing to do. And eventually we lose that connection to divinity. We lose the connection. It's always there, but we cover it up. We've buried it under so many piles of dirt that we call culture and civilization. We bury it under so many things of this is right and this is wrong. We bury it under trauma and drama, and then we forget that who we truly are is actually connected to that divine being, and we've never stopped being that person. So what do I wish for my youth to have known is that the suffering that I was going through was just a phase, and it's no different, despite the fact that it looks different, than the suffering and the covering up that everybody else also deals with. I wish that going forward, we as a culture, as a society, learn to stop shoving our definition of reality down everybody else's throat and forcing it on them, so that they can instead be allowed to grow and shine and be the expression of divinity that they came into the world to be.
I truly believe that's where we're heading. I truly believe that is where the world is heading, where we are so much more aware of our own gifts, so much more connected with how we feel, how we behave, and what rings true for our souls versus what rings through for society. So I'm excited about that. And this is exactly the type of conversation that people need to hear, because they too are being awoken to this gift and not sure how to utilize it, what to do with it. Yes, I can do this, but it is not special. Everyone can do this. Hold on. No. This is your gift. This is not everyone else's gift. And important to say here, the way that you show up with your gift is going to be super unique. And you're going to bring in the specific type of person who needs your message. So for anyone here today who resonated with what Charlie shared, who resonated with, oh my God, I'm going through the same, please reach out to him. Give yourself that gift of recognizing that there is more than you know out there for you to discover, so that you step into your own power and your own gifts, into your own wholeness. And that is truthfully why we have these conversations every week, so that we all can recognize that our human part is one thing, but our spiritual journey is a whole expansion of beingness that is ready to shine upon you first and then everyone else. Thank you so much, Charlie, for being so raw and authentic, for sharing where you're at right now, for delivering the truth for where you are at, so that someone else can hear into and feel into where they are at for themselves.
Well, Matina, you're very welcome, and I'm very grateful for being allowed to be on this podcast. Honestly, it was opening for me, 100%. Me, the ordinary guy who, just goes through my life and does everything. I'm glad I was able to share some wisdom. I do hope that everybody remembers that their gifts are their own, but there is a common factor for everybody, and that is expressing those gifts through love. As long as it's guided by love, then you're doing the right thing. So absolutely, and that's a message that I will take and continue to reinforce within myself as I allow myself to be willing to move forward along the spiritual path as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Till next time. Thank you for spending your time here. Sharing your reflections in the comments or passing this conversation along helps this space reach people who are looking for support and don't always know where to turn. Take a breath as you transition back into your day and notice what's present now. I'll meet you again next